Hey everybody, welcome to summer. Every year I make a summer reading list, and it's fun for me to do. People sometimes seem to like them, and so I'm doing it again this year, but it's a little bit different. What I decided to do is I've got a lot of books. I've got a little bit more than I usually do, and I've got them arranged by category because I feel like, the way that things are in the world today, we need to be we need to be a little bit more active. We need to be thinking about ourselves, thinking about our place in the world. And so what I've got is 4 different categories. The first one has to do with immigration. The second one has to do with activism. The third one has to do with identity, finding your place in the world. And then the last one has to do with economic difference. And so I'm going to really quickly go through these books as quickly as I can. And if you check the video description, I've got a link to a site that I created that's got all of these books listed, and there are links there so that you can order the books if you are so inclined. But the titles and the authors are all listed there, so that's important. So first, let's take a look at immigration. Let's start with this. Refugee by Alan Gratz. And what I think is really cool about this book is he's got 3 different stories and he kind of tells them, he's kind of got them woven together. 3 different stories from 3 different time periods. One is a young Jewish boy and his family trying to escape Nazi Germany. Another one is a young girl from Cuba who is trying to get with her family from in the 1970s to get from Cuba to America. And then the third is a family from Syria that's trying to get to Germany, and in the more recent time, in this century. So really cool because you see these commonalities, and you see the fact that refugees and immigrants are all facing, no matter when in history we're talking about, they're all facing really similar issues. Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga, and there's a couple things that are cool about it. One, really beautiful story. Second, it's written in verse, which is kind of cool. And I think it's the only book I've got here written in verse. But it's about a young girl who's growing up in Syria, and when the war becomes too dangerous there, her family decides they need to leave, and she ends up in Cincinnati and learns that America is not the welcoming place that she always imagined it would be. But it's a really cool story, an important story. Front Desk. Project Lit read Other Words for Home, also read this book, Front Desk. This was our first book of this school year. And it's about this girl named Mia she was born in this country. Her family, her parents were born in China, and she is, they work in a motel. She works often at the front desk of this motel, and she's got lots of crazy adventures, and she's got kids at school who don't treat her the right way. It's a really good story, Front Desk, and it's the first of a trilogy. So if you read this one, make sure you check out the next 2. Nowhere Boy by Catherine Marsh. This is a really great story. It's about this boy from America, Max, who is in Europe, living in Europe because his family has his father relocated, and so he's not happy to be there. But then what he discovers is that there is another boy, a refugee from Syria, who is hiding out in their basement. And this story is kind of told this book is told in 2 parallel stories. And eventually, obviously, these 2 boys meet, and they learn an awful lot about each other. Max learns about how difficult life is as a refugee, and they help each other out. They both help each other. It's a really good story. Next, activism. It's really easy to think that we can't, if you're a young kid, that you just kind of have to accept the way things are. Here's some people who don't. Good Kind of Trouble. We read this last summer in Project Lit. Lisa Moore Ramey, and Shayla is this girl. She's this black girl who's not really sure about how her friends see her. She's not sure about what her role in the world. Should she be going to protest marches or not? Her older sister is very active. And then something happens at school that makes her realize that she does need to take a stand. And so A Good Kind of Trouble, obviously that references John Lewis. I love that she's wearing a backpack. That makes me think about John Lewis, who brought a backpack with an apple and a toothbrush to every protest because he knew he was going to end up in jail. A Good Kind of Trouble. check this book out. Another Project Lit book, Am Unbound by Aisha Saeed. This is about a young girl whose life is going in a straight line, and she lives in Pakistan, and she's expecting that she's going to grow up to become a teacher, but she says the wrong thing to a powerful person, and she ends up in his debt. Her family ends up in his debt, and she enters into a life of indentured servitude. She thinks it's going to be just for a few weeks, and then she quickly learns that this could be what the rest of her life is like. So it's about her trying to figure that out, and then taking steps to kind of change this so this doesn't happen to other young girls. I'm All Unbound, really good story. And look at how beautiful the cover is. Okay, another Project Lit book that we did last summer, Ghost Boys by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And this is, on its surface, it's about a young boy who, in the very first pages, Jerome is a young boy who is playing with a toy gun, and he's shot by a white police officer. And so we see the tragedy of that, and we see how it affects Jerome's family. But what I like about this book is we also see the family of the white police officer and how that family is also destroyed and devastated. And that the police officer's daughter decides she needs to do something about this. She becomes an activist, and I really like that part of the story. It's a great book for a lot of reasons, but that's why it's on this list. The last two, I've got a couple nonfiction, some real people. And if you want to talk about an activist, if you want to talk about courage, Malala Yousafzai. And if you don't know her story, you should know her story. And again, she's growing up. She's growing up in a place where, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't believe that young girls should go to school, because why should they? And she realized that she wanted to go to school. She actually took a bullet because she wanted to go to school, because she refused to turn around. And it's an amazing story. And she did this at a very young age and changed the world. Changed her world, but also is impacting people all around the world. I Am Malala. This is the young adult version. There's also a biography, a memoir that she wrote for grown-ups, so your whole family could read this together. I Am Malala. Do you know this girl? You should know this girl. Greta Thunberg. And this girl is fierce. You hear people being described as fierce? That's her. And what this book is, this is a collection of speeches that she has made, beginning at the age of 13, 14 years old, when she started speaking out about climate change, when she started a one-student school strike, one student, and that expanded to millions of people marching about a year or two ago. And she has gone from speaking on a street corner in Sweden when no one wanted to hear her, to speaking to the United Nations, to speaking to Congress. And so this is a collection of those speeches that she has made, and her words are powerful, and a reminder that at any age, you can change the world. Let's talk about financial economic difference. This is the first book that we read here at Stanford Project Lit, The Benefits of Being an Octopus by Anne Braden. And what's great about this is Zoe is this girl who's, she's just going to school trying to live her life. And then we discover as readers how difficult her life is. Sometimes we think about it, okay, well, if you are poor, maybe that means that you, can't buy the things that you want to buy. But we see it in her life. What that means for Zoe is that there's not always food for dinner. It means that her mother is stuck in a bad relationship because she has no other options. It means that sometimes Zoe has to wear dirty clothes to school because they don't have a washer and dryer in their house, because they don't have money to put coins in the laundromat. They don't have money to buy gas to put in the car to drive to the laundromat. And so we see all of these different ways that her poverty impacts her daily life. It's a really important story, really good story, great book. You're going to love Zoe. You'll never forget her. Powerful. Jason Reynolds is my hero. And this is probably the first book of his that I read, I think, Ghost. I've read, I bet, 6 of his books. I've loved every single one of them. I've got this on here, and this isn't, like benefits of being an octopus, I think is strictly really, it's about how poverty impacts this, this young girl. Ghost is about other things also, but it's an important part of Castle's life, and the fact that he can't get the things that he wants. And so check this book out, it's really good. Efren Divided by Ernesto Cisneros. If you're part of Project Lit, you remember that this author, Ernesto Cisneros, came to our meeting, which was amazing. And this is a book about a lot of things, but one of the things that we see is how we see how Efren's life is impacted when his mother goes missing, and how that means his father has to take a second job. That means that Efren has to take care of his two younger siblings. We get a look at their home. We get a look at what their day-to-day life is like, and we see how challenging this is. This is an important story because kids like Efren are walking around amongst us. Sometimes we don't see them. This book lets us see them. Okay, so the last category is identity. These 7 I've got here specifically because they're about, these characters are trying to figure out who they are, trying to find their place in the world. Some of them feel like they're not being seen. Some of them feel like they're not being treated fairly. Some of them feel like they don't know who they are. I bought this book because the cover is so beautiful. And it turned out that the inside is just as beautiful. So Sparrow is the name of the main character. And she's having trouble because she doesn't feel good about herself. When we first meet her, she's standing on the edge of her school building, and her school, the people at school feel like they assume that she's getting ready to jump off, but Sparrow is getting ready to fly, and she wants to be a bird. She wants that freedom that comes from being a bird, and what we see as this book develops is the relationship with her mother, which is not good, only because her mother is struggling. Her mother desperately wants to help Sparrow, but doesn't understand. The two of them can't communicate really well. Sparrow sees a therapist who is awesome and who really, who is really instrumental into helping Sparrow find her way. Music becomes really critical. If you like music, you're going to love this book because there's a lot of great music that's mentioned in here. It's a part of Sparrow's journey as she discovers who she is. I love this book, Sparrow by Sarah Moon. We read this in Project Lit. Maybe He Just Likes You, and by Barbara D. And this is an issue that unfortunately, we deal with here on our middle school campus all the time. Not all the time, but we deal with it. And where there's a group of boys who are not clear on what the boundaries should be. And our main character, what's her name? Mila. She feels uncomfortable. These boys are making her feel uncomfortable. And the problem is that when she goes to people, most of her friends tell her, it's not a big deal. You're overreacting. Maybe he just likes you, right? But Mila knows how she feels. She knows that what's happening is not appropriate. As readers, we know this. And we're rooting for her. And what I love about this book is we get to watch her find her voice. We get to watch her claim her identity. And that's what this book is about, really. It's a really good book. It was really popular in Project Lit this year. Maybe He Just Likes You by Barbara D. Miscalculations of Lightning Girl. The reason this book is in here is because, let's see, Lucy is her name. And so we find out in the first few pages that before the book had started, when Lucy was much younger, she was climbing a fence. The fence was struck by lightning. Lucy was blasted off of it as the electricity coursed through her body, and her brain was changed. When she awoke, she was a mathematical genius. And so Lightning Girl is why she refers to herself as this. And so, but it changed her brain in other ways. And so she thinks a little bit differently than other kids. Other kids see her as kind of like a weirdo. And so she's navigating middle school, which can be difficult under the best of circumstances. And she's trying to figure out her place. She's trying to make friends. She's trying to navigate those social relationships that can sometimes be really difficult for all of us, but especially when when you think a little bit differently, it could be even more difficult. Miscalculations of Lightning Girl by Stacey McAnulty. Really good book. Check this one out. Here's another one. If you like music, you've got to check this book out. And so Malu, her name is Maria Luisa, but she likes to be called Malu. She is strong and independent, and she's in middle school, and she's moved to a new city. And so she's dealing with the fact that her parents are divorced, and so she's dealing with the fact that she's left her father behind in Los Angeles, and she misses him. She's at this new school, and she's worried she's not going to be able to find other kids who are like her, other kids who like the music that she listens to. And so it's about her trying to find that. But the other thing is she's worried. She's wondering, how Mexican is she? And so she's Mexican-American, her mother is Mexican-American, her mother is very proud of her heritage, and Malu just wants to be a kid, and she's wondering about that. The other cool thing about this is she's artistic. She has a kind of like a journal that she creates, and so most of the book is like standard text, but every once in a while there'll be things like this that will, see most of it, but every once in a while there'll be artwork that she's done, and I like that addition to this book. The Other Boy. Love this book. And so when we meet Shane, he's a regular kid. This boy, he's not, he's on a baseball team. He's 12 years old. He's on a baseball team, plays video games with his best friend, just normal stuff, right? But then pretty early in the book, we discover that Shane was born a girl, and he is transitioning to life as a boy. And he's trying to keep that a secret, and then people find out. And so you can kind of imagine how difficult that is. But this is a really, really good book, a really important book, The Other Boy by M.G. Hennessy. Check this book out. It's really good. New Kid. We read this one. This is the only graphic novel on the summer list. We read this in Project Lit, and it was really good. There it is, graphic novel. And so it's about, Jordan Banks is his name, and Jordan's in the 7th grade, and he is starting a new school. We've had a few of those, right? He's starting a new school, and he is one of the few black kids at his school. The school is predominantly white, and so that's an issue for him. People don't go out of their way to treat him badly because of the color of his skin, but a lot of the people there don't know how to treat him because of the color of his skin. That's the only thing that they see about him. And so they make assumptions, and there are microaggressions, and there are, little things like that make him uncomfortable. And so it's about Jordan trying to figure that out, and trying to balance his friends at home with his friends at school, and trying to continue to be a good student, because he is a good student in an environment that's making it a little bit difficult for him to do that. New Kid, Jerry Craft. If you like this one, there's a sequel to this called Class Act. But this book is great. Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World. And this is my favorite book of the year. For Project Lit, it was the favorite book. According to our survey results, it was Stanford Project Lit's favorite book of the year. Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake. In the beginning of the book, there's a tornado that comes through town. And that storm becomes kind of like a metaphor for Ivy's life being turned upside down. She has a crush on a classmate. This is pretty common in middle school. This classmate is a girl. And so Ivy begins to wonder, what does this mean? Do I really have a crush on this girl, or is she just someone that I want to be friends with? What's going on inside of me? And so this book is about her trying to figure that out. And then wondering, can she share this with anybody? Can she talk to anybody about this? It's a beautiful book. This is a book that I fell in love with on page 1. You will too. Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World. So that's a lot of books. Someone out there, I bet, is going to read all of them. And when you do, I need you to come and tell me. But my suggestion is maybe you want to read all of the books on identity. Maybe you want to read all the books about immigration. Maybe you want to read one book from each one. Maybe there's just one book that I talked about today that you think you want to read this summer, and that's okay too. Whatever you do, read something and have a great summer.